Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. This podcast started as like a celebration of the everyday runner. The idea of Borderlands was the Borderlands are the crossover between two places. And, in our hearts, we want to be ultra runners, but in our lives, we want to be good dads and good moms and good employees and good business owners and all that sort of stuff. And so the Borderlands was the overlapping of those two. It's a Venn diagram. Every important business discussion I've ever had has involved a Venn diagram, and the Venn diagram of who we are as humans and who we want to be as competitors. Borderlands is the overlap of those two. And today is just a perfect snapshot. I have a lot going on, and I was running all over the place, and my hair was falling out and on fire and all of those sorts of things, but still, man, got to make time for a good conversation. And today, welcoming a friend, an old friend, from we met once, but we have this really great friend in common also, so I feel like I've known him a lot longer than I actually have. But he has run 50 miles before, which is awesome, and he's jumping straight to 240. And I thought that was an awesome conversation because he's a business owner, he's a family man, he's got a lot of stuff, he's spinning a ton of plates and going straight from 50 to the Moab 240 this year. So before we go any further, Cade, welcome. How are you?
Hey, thanks, man. I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm real excited to connect. And you're exactly right. I've heard of the myth of Josh for a really long time, but as we've gotten to chat a few times over the last several weeks, it's been fun to get to know you a bit more in real life.
Yeah, dude, I'm pumped on this. I'm glad that we made it happen. You've got, you're family guy. You're hitting the road for a month in an RV, and you're 5 months out from Moab 240.
Yeah.
So talk about the plates that you're spinning in order to hit your big goal. Like, what all you got going on?
Yeah, thankfully I'm self-employed, so I own several small businesses, and that, as you very well know firsthand, it requires a lot of hours. But the beauty of it is, you get to manage when you work those hours most of the time. So
Yeah.
the flexibility there is a huge blessing. My wife does not work, and so that's a huge asset for someone who does a lot of training because it's kind of managing one work schedule, not two. And then I have two young teenagers. My wife is very supportive of my obnoxious, oh, I'm going to start this business. Oh, I'm going to go run this race. Oh, I'm going to buy a motorhome and we're going to travel the country. Like she just kind of is along for the ride. So that makes it pretty easy for me.
We're going to weave back in out of all this sort of stuff, but I wanted to
Sure.
lay that foundation of, what we talk about is like, as Joe Corcione would put it, like the everyday athlete.
Yeah.
What you and I are working on together, a little bit of a teaser, is this idea of a full price athlete. And it's those of us who are paying the price on every front to get to do what we love. And quite literally, when we buy gear, we are paying MSRP from REI or from whatever you're into, whatever.
Oh, yeah, I have a long list.
Yes. And you've done 50 miles, which is, when you think about the number of people in the world that do a marathon, and then the number of people who've run a marathon who go further than a marathon, you're in rarefied air at 50 miles, but then you got the bug for 240 and you're jumping straight from 50 miles to 240 miles. Just let me give that to you as the prompt. Where do you want to go with that? How'd that happen?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like probably most of your listeners, I'm on Instagram and I follow all the greats from Courtney Dauwalter to Cam Hanes to Nick Bear at BPN. All these, intense athletes that do super hard things. David Goggins, obviously, I think probably had a big hand in kind of making Moab 240 a bit famous. So you follow all these, athletes who are phenomenal and they start doing all these hard things. And you follow these folks long enough and you start to get this idea or start to get this vision that maybe you're capable of doing something similar.
Yeah.
And then you start following all the kind of the mid packers or the back of the packers and you start seeing what they're capable of and what they're accomplishing and how they're finishing. And then they're putting out YouTube videos. Like Wes Plate is I think a great example of someone who does this. I mean this as no disrespect. That dude must be, a mental, kind of specimen just in terms of his mental and kind of physical fortitude. But, you wouldn't pick him out as like some extreme endurance athlete, in a lineup.
Yeah.
But you start seeing what he's doing with all these 200s he's finished. And as you watch these things and as you kind of daydream about it, you start to kind of grow in this belief that maybe you are capable of doing something like that. And then for me, I don't know if you saw this, but when Cam Hanes was talking about his preparation for the Cocodona 250 this year, he said something to the effect of, am I really who I say I am?
Mm,
Right. Like
yeah.
he has this mindset, of just being able to kind of do anything. And even he was questioning himself saying, am I who I say I am? Am I capable of doing what I think I'm capable of doing? I kind of started thinking that. And so
Mm,
next thing I know, you're signing up for the Moab 240, you're in the lottery, you're waiting those 3 weeks or whatever it is. And you're part of you is like, oh gosh, don't pull my name in the
right.
hat. And the other part of you is like, man, I hope I get in. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at. And it's been a lot of fun training and, hiring, coaches and, doing all the kind of mental preparation, putting together your crew, not to mention, all the training. I live in Lubbock, Texas, where there's zero elevation, zero hills out here. And
Yeah.
so trying to think about the 33,000 feet of vert and,
Yeah.
descent and all that stuff has been a lot of fun. So that's kind of how we got here so far.
Yeah, gosh, so many questions, so many threads I'm interested in on that. And one is like just practically speaking. I mean, Moab has been. I lived in Lubbock until 2002 when our mutual friend Dusty Thompson and I went on a trip to Salt Lake, and then I just didn't come home from that
Didn't
trip, and I
leave.
never, I was there
Loved
for
it.
like
Yeah.
22 more years after that. But Moab was a backyard. It was the annual trip with my buddies to go run Red Hot in February every year, 33K, 55K. I mean, Moab is a dream. But just bury me in Moab or somewhere between Moab and Zion at Bryce, whatever. I'll be happy. But those LaSalle Mountains are no joke, even though they look like they're not that big compared to the Wasatch when you're in Salt Lake, or of course the Alps if you're in Chamonix. But you're getting 33,000 or more. How do you prepare for that in Lubbock, Texas?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I'll let you know after that race in October. Yeah, that part is pretty intimidating, I think. I have a phenomenal coach. I've had him for a long time.
Hmm.
He's absolutely a beast. He's not on Strava. He's not on Instagram. He won't tell me when his next race is.
Is he
Funny
Gen
story.
X? What's he? I mean, is he older than us? What's he?
Yeah, he's 50 years old, dude, and
Okay,
can
there he is.
absolutely. I mean, a couple of years ago in the Lubbock Marathon, he was the charity runner, and I can't remember. They made him go like 10, 15, 20 minutes after everybody else started, and then the more people he picked off, the more money that was raised.
Oh, that's
My
cool.
friends and I are just cruising along at mile 6 or 7 or whatever, just kind of chatting up, and all of a sudden, his name's Quint,
Hmm.
he just flies past us. I'm not kidding. If he, who Ken Rideout is, the 55-year-old dude who's running like 210 marathons or
Oh,
215
yes,
marathons.
yes, yes,
I'm
yes, yes.
telling you, if my coach trained like that, he would be up there. He's just he's just an absolute machine. But anyway, I've worked with him for several years. He's done dozens and dozens of hundreds, 50s. Like he's just amazing. I hired Cameron Harder. Have you seen him on Instagram?
Yes, definitely.
Does a lot of the physical therapy and training. So what we're doing is we're approaching the training like a 100-mile race from a volume and mileage perspective. And then the second thing I'm doing is taking strength training. I've always enjoyed lifting, so I've always done it, but I hired someone very specific for ultra strength training. So
Hmm.
Cameron's been really fun to work with so far. So that's the second kind of focus area. But then third is the second workout of the day, so long as I can fit it in. And most of the time I do, is either like going for like an hour long power hiking. So I'm trying to get extremely good at walking.
Hmm.
So I'm in Lubbock, so there's no hills, but I'm doing 12-minute miles, 11 and a half minute miles, walking. So I'm
Oh my
getting really
gosh.
good at walking. And then I'll do 30 to 45-minute rucks on a treadmill at 15 to 20%.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
kind of a second workout. And so that's really kind of the best I can do. I'm going to be in Maine for a month, so I'll get some trail running in
Oh,
there. So
yeah,
that'll
that's
be
great.
awesome. So that's kind of the approach we're taking from a training. And then we'll do tons of simulations. Like I'll run 30 miles at Potter Canyon, which you can get some decent,
Yes.
vertical gain down there. It's pretty rugged trails. And then you kind of rest and then, basically hike 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So you're getting used to the dark.
Yep.
You're, fueling after a long day of training. You're getting more vertical gain. So we'll do a lot of kind of quote simulations like that. Yeah, and that's I think the best I can do where I live. Short of just living on a stair climber.
Right. Here's okay. Let me throw this out there. I have a disproportionate love of the 100 miler, and I feel like there's the reason for the 100 mile love is there's something about me. I mean, I played sports early on, but then I quit sports to just play punk rock, in junior high and high school. And that was my life. And I always look back and, I'm super competitive mentally, and that plays itself out in business. And I
Yeah.
try and, funnel that into healthy things, like my ultra running and being competitive with myself. Something about the 100-miler to me that still feels like a race, even though I'm real slow, but I still think of it in my mind. It lives it like this is a real athletic race. And 200 plus is becoming that right now. I mean, we saw Dan Green.
For the elites, for sure.
Yes. But I feel like I put the 200 plus mile lives in the category of adventure, even over race. And so sometimes when I see someone jump from like the 50K, one person that did it that comes to mind is Randy Zuckerberg. She was on her podcast last year. And that's when she said, yeah, I got in, I'm doing Cocodona. And to that point, she'd only done a 50K, I think. And so it feels like it calls to the adventurers a bit more. Is that you?
Yeah, I think so. I like doing hard things. Yeah, hard things have a disproportionate positive impact on your life, whatever that hard thing is. I mean, that could
Yeah.
be doing 1,000 burpees for time. It's just 1,000 things you could do that are
Right.
hard and good for you. It doesn't have to be ultra running. For me, I like, ultra running because, it keeps me healthy. I mean this no disrespect to my extended family, but both sides of my family are pretty unhealthy. And so if I don't exercise, if I don't do something extreme, then I'm going to gravitate towards that, even just genetically. And, and so that really inspires me from a running perspective. But I think the allure, I sometimes when I'm running, like literally visualize and almost fantasize about crossing the finish line.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about an adventure, I mean, you're talking about, moving, as fast as you can for 240 miles, just to cross the finish line. I mean, that's it. Like that's the prize, is finishing, unless you're an
Yeah.
elite and obviously you're trying to race it. I'm not an
Yeah.
elite. I'm not trying to race it. My A goal is 85 hours. My B goal is 100 hours, and my C goal is just, finish by all means
Is
necessary,
it like 120-hour cutoff, or what is the cutoff?
117. Yeah, you're
117.
close. 117-hour cutoff. And so I met with, oh, good grief. I'm blanking on his name. He's Ben Light. Ben Light.
Oh,
So I met
yeah.
with Ben Light a few months back,
Utah
just
guy.
kind of quizzing him on all things 200.
Yeah.
And after we got done talking for about an hour, and he had heard about my training and what I had been doing and kind of my focus and, what my coach and I had lined out in terms of how we were preparing, because my A goal was 100 hours. And he goes, man, I hate to tell you this, but you're not being ambitious enough. He said, if you execute your training, I mean, he just said the kinds of questions I was asking and the way we were approaching it was, way beyond what most people are doing in terms of prepping for it. So he said, I think you need to aim for 85 hours. So that's what we're going to do. So
Nice.
I just think the adventure is part of it, but I think being able to look at yourself in the mirror and put in the amount of time and training necessary physically to accomplish it, but more mentally. I think it's way more mental than it is physical.
Yeah.
And I think preparing for that mental component, like there's going to be, I would imagine, over a dozen times where in your head, you're like, okay, you've made it 87 miles. That's good enough. Or you've
Right.
made it 150 miles. That's good enough.
Yeah.
And I keep imagining getting to the 120-mile mark and going, oh my goodness, I'm halfway.
Yeah.
I'm halfway. I
Go
can
one
barely
more of
walk.
those.
I can't hold any food down. What
Yeah.
am I going to do? And
Yeah.
I think preparing for those moments mentally is I'm here for it. And I have no idea how to respond. I'd like to respond the way that I expect myself to respond.
Right.
But you got to go find all these things out,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And it's just, I don't know. It's kind of exhilarating, I think.
Yeah. We've been on this at Borderlands in general, like on this. When I first started, I was disproportionate, like back of the pack, middle of the pack, storytelling and all that sort of stuff. And the mission of Borderlands is to be the heart of trail running. And I thought, not only practically are more brands interested in partnering with me if I have a wider scope and have a touch on the elite
Sure.
sport, I'm also interested in the elite sport. And so I had to kind of pause and take Borderlands and push out the boundaries of what all we cover. And then in order to establish ourselves as a voice in the elite world, which we're still trying to do, I've been disproportionately talking elite stuff and having a blast while doing it. But so with what we're doing here with you and I, like, I'm trying to, kind of bring back some of this balance, because it's just nice. And I guess where I'm going with this is that it's nice to be just in the middle of a conversation where I identify with, okay, 100 feels crazy. And I love that feeling of the halfway point. I love that feeling because I hate it so much and I can push through it, of the halfway point. That's really compelling to, I mean, I don't care what distance it is. Halfway to me is always kind of a pain. It can be a 10K if I'm pushing it real hard to try and get like 55 minutes. Halfway through, I'm like, God, can I double this? 100 miler, 20, whatever you set out to that day, halfway is hard.
It's unbelievable how the mind works.
Yes. But also the point of that too is that no matter where you start, you can go, that distance is how far you can go that day. If you set out for 100, sometimes people will run 100 miler and say, get to the end of the 100, they're like, there's no way I could double that.
Right.
Well, if you started your day thinking that you were going to go 200,
that's right.
You can.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. And I think that it's a testament to how powerful the mind is. I mean, yeah, that is I think the most alluring part about any of the ultras is the way that it tests your mind. And can your mind, control your emotions and your body, because your emotions and your body are going to go way before your mind. And so do you have that? One of my favorite words is grit. Do you have grit in those moments? And the fascinating thing about these 200s is, like, I mean, let's say there's there's 300 people in Cocodona 250. There's probably a similar number in Moab 240.
Yeah.
Less than 10%, maybe 5%, less than 5% of the people in that race are racing, racing for top 3. The rest of us are just normal, everyday people, just like me and you. You have 2 to 3 jobs, you got kids, you have friends, you have church obligations, you have community obligations, you're traveling as a family. Like, sometimes I really enjoy, like, in my perfect week where I'm at home, we're not going anywhere, there are no events, I can kind of train like a professional athlete. I can get my run out in the morning. I can dial in my nutrition throughout the day. I can do the second workout. I can log into my app with Cameron and I can do my strength workout. I can sauna. I can drink all the water. I can take the BP and electrolytes. I can do 180 grams of protein. I can go to bed at 8:00. But that doesn't happen very often. Like, most of us is like fitting it in the cracks and doing the best you can. And then you show up at Moab 240 and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna try to do the best I can. So I think that's to be celebrated for sure.
You'd made an interesting comment, how few people are actually racing these things. So I was looking at that, but then I guess I was also thinking about another thing I wanted to pull on is, when you have one of those hard days, this is what's really hard for me. When you have one of those hard days, it doesn't go according to plan, which is what I'm having today. And even if you got 6 miles on the calendar and you want to be a good dad, you want to be a good husband, and you got to take some calls, you got meetings, you got all this sort of stuff. There are moments in the day where it's like a kick in the gut. And I'm just like, man, I don't want to go out and do that today. But those are the times that, like, make you, in terms of, like, on race day, you look back and be like, I needed every one of those days. And some days I punted for no reason and did nothing. Are you able to push through, like, the piles on top of you and what are you willing to sacrifice to push through those piles that are on top of you in order to get that training in?
That's when you find out, right? I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, no, some days I don't. Some days I wimp out. Some days I don't have the mental fortitude. Some days I don't do what I know I'm supposed to do. Some days I allow my, feelings, to control my discipline, my mind.
Yeah.
And something my coach is always preaching, and I really appreciate it. And I think it's dead on. It's like, okay, on those bad days, 30 minutes. So you had 90 minutes scheduled. That's okay. On occasion, life happens. You're not a professional athlete. It's fine, but go get 30 minutes. You got to do something.
Yeah.
Got to do something. And I don't think those days are necessarily for the physical fitness. They're for the mental fitness. They're for the mental reps.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first race where I've ever thought to myself that the mental reps I'm going through are every bit as important as the mileage and the training and the whatever. Good. Yesterday we were supposed to be on the road. It didn't work out. My son broke his arm, so we had to stay home. I didn't have a scheduled run. My whole week was a little bit jacked up, and because of his karate stuff. And I'm like, I just need to do something hard. So I'm going to go run 3 hours on the track, and it's 90 degrees, do some heat training
awesome.
and work on some calories, while I'm hot.
Yeah.
Well, 30 minutes in, I'm like, oh boy, this is, not going to be good. This is not going to be a good training block. Well, I ended up running for 2 hours, 11 miles, wasn't 3 hours, but I wanted to stop at 30 minutes, but instead I stopped at 2 hours. I don't know how much physical fitness I got out of that. I'm sure I got some, but the mental reps I got yesterday were really important because I could tell, you're a runner, you can tell 15 minutes in, I'm like, oh no, I don't have it today. The calories are not saying good. It's hot.
Yeah.
I already want to quit. So my mind's already forsaken me. And so I was really proud of myself for, instead of quitting, because I could have, my coach didn't have anything scheduled that day. I could have easily just gone home and just, wrote it off as that's not my day. So I was proud of that mental rep of going from, 15 minutes of wanting to quit to 2 hours running in circles at 90 degrees and just getting in that mental exercise. So I think that's another huge element of training for this race, especially, as just a normal dude who's not an elite athlete, and just a normal life of jobs and family and friends and commitments and, stuff like that.
I did, so last year, I'd gone on this journey back to my 10th 100-miler because my first 9 100-milers, I finished one of them.
Yeah.
And, I'm not conscientious, but I'm a thinker. I wish I was more conscientious, but I'm a processor, and I think and I think and I think. And, with each one, I'd be like, okay, here's what I did wrong. Here's what I'll do better next time. And the trap and the loop that I got stuck in was there was this reality of I need to be ready for everything that comes at me, the specific things that could come at me. And so going into number 10, it's like, okay, I know everything that can come at me. Well, I go on. So this podcast started with like the first 35 episodes of me asking the same question to 35 people. How do you keep going when you want to quit? One of them was a physical therapist, killer runner, Casey Brady. She lives in Park City. She's a top 3 finisher at, various distances. And I was like, okay, I want a high priority because I had younger kids. Now now my youngest is 5.5. My priority was 48 hours from whatever race I'm doing. I need to be able to pick up my kids and be a useful husband. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, I get that. But I was like, okay, beyond those types of goals, when should I stop for the sake of my body in the middle of a race? And I'm misrepresenting her. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. Go listen to the episode. But this was my takeaway, is that unless you hear a pop, there's no reason that you should ever stop. And the consensus among all these great athletes, from Candace Burt, who I had on the podcast, everyone was like, to your point about the mind, there is no reason to stop ever. You will always be okay, with the exception of the obvious things like rhabdo, which I had a touch of that at 1 year. That DNF was the only one that like clinically made sense. But beyond that, I mean, and this was what helped me with number 10. It was like, oh, there's nothing. I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. There's nothing except for obvious things like a pop or like an obvious sickness. That's like, there's no question. If you question it, you could probably keep going.
100%. I mean, that to me, that's what was so inspiring about Cam Hanes' Cocodona 250. The dude
with the broken foot.
It's literally been about, which they should rename it 257, because after 250 miles, 250 miles, 7 miles is a long way.
And the Arizona Monster 309. I do think it should be called the 309.
That's true. Agree completely. What was so inspiring about his race is the dude's had a broken foot for a year. I mean, you saw pictures of it on Instagram. Joe Rogan, right the week before Cocodona 250, is like, dude, you're an absolute idiot. What are you doing? You should quit. And this is Joe Rogan, who's pretty tough himself.
Right. Yeah. I was actually kind of surprised by his take on that.
Me too. But I mean, that just goes to show you how bad that foot was. And he goes to that Waste to Wells in Austin and gets it worked on. But the dude's got a broke foot. He's 57 years old and gets I think he got 19th or 20th place. Bonkers, insane. So I find that to be outrageously inspiring, that mentally that dude was putting in all those miles on a broken foot, and then it worked its way up his body because he's compensating. And at 57
Yeah.
years old, he goes out and does that. I can run 240 miles. If
Yes.
Cam Hanes at 57 on a broke foot can run 257 miles in those conditions, by the way, which are the
Right.
worst in the history of Cocodona 250, I can go
Mm.
run 240 miles. I
Yeah.
mean, just thinking about it gets me amped up because you're like, no, 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 you can do it. Like your body can run 240 miles if your mind believes that it can, period. Bottom, end of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the great, I mean, the lie, like here's another hard part in the middle of it is that you are being told so many lies by yourself. It's a great skill for life to start, to work up this muscle, to work up this skill for discerning when you are lying to yourself, which is almost like feels like it's very confounding to even think of. Like, how can you even interpret that you're lying to yourself? There has to be like, is there a higher self that can look down on this other self that's telling you? Because I mean, on some levels, in general, you just have to call your mind a liar. Like
Yeah.
it's trying to protect itself.
Yeah.
However you view how your mind came to be what it is, it's trying to do like the Lord's work here of saying stop.
Yeah.
This is not what you shouldn't be doing this, and you just have to ignore it. I don't even understand like this. It feels like very meta. It feels like very like you're going above who you are to look down on yourself and say you're fine, keep going. You're lying to yourself.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to figure out how your alter ego works, right? Like
Mm,
I think there's some very challenging things about David Goggins,
yeah,
from a spiritual perspective. But at the end of the day, the dude is as tough of a human as there is, and he clearly taps into something. I think that's very kind of very dark, to go to those depths. And then you look at someone like Courtney Dauwalter, who I would argue is every bit as tough as a David Goggins, but she
yeah,
does it from an entirely different perspective in terms of she's always happy, she's always
yeah,
smiling. Even before her body quit on her at Cocodona 250, she's asking every person who says hi to her, "How are you doing today?" Like she's like a mile 107. "How are you doing today?" As she's
yeah,
running down the sidewalk, and someone waves at her. So she taps into something completely different. Cam Hanes taps into something different. So
yeah,
you have to kind of figure out, I think, to your point, and that's what I've been working on in this Moab 240. It's like, what am I going to anchor myself to at those darkest moments, so that I hold on to whatever truth that I've already established before I've ever even gotten to those dark moments, so that the dark moments don't win.
yeah,
And it's kind of different for everybody, but I think determining what that's going to be ahead of time goes a really, really long ways in kind of establishing it. There's already a few things that I want to lean on. We have three family core values, and the third is
hmm
no compromise. The third one is no compromise. So no compromise on our faith, no compromise on being good friends, no compromise on loving each other as a family, no so you just, whatever is important, it's like, no, no, no compromise. And I think that's the thing that I'm going to try to lean into, in those really dark moments. It's like, no, 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 no compromise. Do not listen. Do not listen to that. Hey, congrats. You've ran further than you've ever ran at mile 51. You could tap out now. Not going to happen. No compromise.
All right. So, two questions for you in regard to both of those. One is fun, and one is, let's just say, less fun, but still funish. Okay. You're going into, the finish line. You can see it at Moab
Man.
240.
Yeah.
There's a power in visualizing that and seeing, like, hey, that is where I'm headed. That is where I will be. What do you think goes through your head? I mean, I want to get it on record here so then we can ask you after what actually did go through your head. So you're 100 yards out, 200 yards out. You see it. It's clear. What's going through your head? What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think just sheer joy of accomplishing something with, some of your close friends. I mean, I have a, crew of 5 or 6 already kind of assembled, and I think that's probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most, is that experiencing the difficulty of that race together, like with people. And I don't think suffering is meant to be alone in life,
Mm,
really in anything. And I would say the suffering of this like Moab 240, I feel the same way. So I mean, I can just feel the sheer gratitude of just how I'm going to feel to all the people who are there, who helped me get from mile 0 to mile 240. And I think it's going to be an overwhelming emotional experience of
yeah.
accomplishing that together. And then, as I get old, I can think, prior to like being 38 years old, I think I cried 3 times in life. And now like I could just think about my kids, and like start
Yeah.
crying. And so I think when I see my children, who I, deeply love, I think that's going to be super overwhelming because, part of all this for me is like modeling for them, what I hope and what I hope for them, that they'll do hard things, whatever those hard things are. You are going to have hard things in life, whether you want them or not. You're going to have seasons of suffering. And I really do think that, that one component of handling those seasons is intentionally doing hard things so that
Yeah.
you develop that muscle of
Yes.
suffering and doing hard things. And so I think seeing my children after that is going to be overwhelming. So those are the kinds of things that I'm already dreaming about and can't wait, to experience.
Yeah, a number of people have said it. Actually, I think I heard Chris Williamson say it in an interview with Cam Haines. The way that he worded it was really great, and I'm going to mess it up, but involuntary or voluntary suffering prepares us for involuntary suffering.
Yeah.
Of all the reasons, of all the great outcomes, maybe that's not exactly why I do it, but that muscle is being built through the course of this. And then to be able to show your kids, for them to get a bug for doing the things that feel impossible, that feel like, yeah, I'm from an old farm family from central Texas, several generations. This is a weird thing that I'm doing. They had to do it during the Dust Bowl, and they had to
Yeah.
survive the Dust Bowl, and they had to go work the mines in Bisbee, Arizona before going back when the land was ready to be reworked again. And they had their own like survival version. I'm doing this electively, but hopefully there's a similar, if it's not the same, a similar outcome on the other side where I believe in myself. And that's a
100%.
powerful, powerful piece of this. All right. Last question.
Yeah.
Your body's fine. It's 3 weeks later. The race is over. For me, that's the hardest part for me, is when my A race, my big goal, I've been thinking about it usually I think about my A race 10 months out, 8 months out, and it's done. Like, that's a really hard feeling for me. What do you think goes through your head? Your body's fine. You're actually
Yeah.
putting some miles on it again. You're going out. Where does your head go, do you think?
Oh, I have to immediately sign up for another race or else I'll just quit altogether. Like if I don't
Yes,
have
that's
something on the
exactly it.
calendar, if I don't have something on, I'm so ridiculous. It's like, I'm so ridiculous. If I do not have something on the calendar, I'll go from running 6 days a week, dialed in training, doing everything my coach says, to I might go 3 weeks without working out a single
Yeah.
time. It's
With
just
only moving
absolutely
2,000
ridiculous.
steps a day just to
I
get to the
know.
refrigerator.
It's like, yeah. So I already know. I mean, I tried signing up for Cocodona 250 and made the huge mistake of waiting a few hours after it opened, and I'm like 435 on the wait list. So I'll have to, which is ridiculous. I'll have to find something, to sign up for, because it's just the way. I mean, it's just the way I've been all my life. It's like if I don't have something in front of me, I'm not the best version of myself. So
Yeah.
I already know that I'll have to have, and it doesn't have to be necessarily ultra running. I've thought about doing like a high rocks competition.
Yeah.
We didn't get to talk about BPN today, but someday I can't wait. Like I love this whole hybrid athlete, high rocks, going from running a 240-mile race to doing a high rocks, to doing a CrossFit, to doing a 100-mile race, to just this diversity of kind of ultra athlete and endurance athlete, I find to be very appealing. And I think, I'm 41 and I'd like to be doing these things when I'm 71. And I think that whole hybrid athlete approach is going to help you. I keep saying, when my grandkids want to go hike a 14 or run a 100-mile race, or go do the rim to rim to rim and, Grand Canyon, and
Yeah.
I'm 74 years old, I want to be able to immediately say, yes, absolutely, 100%, I'm in. And I think that whole hybrid athlete approach is the way to get there. So,
Yeah. So part of where this thing's going, again, I mentioned it already, in the direction of this full price athlete, full price runner sort of concept. And my personal agenda at Borderlands is to say, BPN fans, High Rocks fans, they are runners too. And to not only say it like Brian and I do on Bad Runners Take, we're advocating for anybody, because this sport has been so good to us. If something is so good to you, why would you not want everybody to do it? And so if the BPN crowd is getting involved, and then they have been, to their credit, they've been involved, but why not bust those gates open? Why not break those gates down? If we really think this is beautiful and this is a great sport and there's so much to be gained from it, why in the world would we ever do anything to keep anybody from coming into it and doing anything other than being a resource to help people come in? So
It's
that's part of my
so
agenda here.
yes, and it's so ironic that that's even a conversation, because the most incredible thing about an ultra race, and even, you know, I'm not doing signature races. I mean, I'm just doing races out here in West Texas and,
Yeah.
you know, Central Texas that no one anywhere else would even know about. But the most beautiful thing about them is, you know, you'll get passed by some 57-year-old woman, or, you know,
Yeah.
I was running a race one time, and I was by a lawyer who was like 64, and it just, he was amazing, and like he
Mm-hmm.
finished ahead of me, you know, and it's just like, it, of all things to be like upset about it, you know, ultra racing is already extremely diverse, and
Yeah.
so it's so weird that there's, you know, it's so weird that this is even a conversation. I mean, last thing I'll say, I know you're probably ready to shut this
Oh, you're
thing
good.
down, but
You're good.
BPN had their inaugural backyard ultra on
Yeah.
Bear Ranch, and the two women who ran the furthest, Alyssa, I can't remember her last name. She's on Instagram. Great follow. She didn't call herself this, but she's a hybrid athlete. She came from a CrossFit background.
Okay.
She religiously lifts weights right now, and she can go a very long ways. She has 4 kids. She's married. She's just a normal athlete, and she ran like 110 miles or something like that at the backyard ultra. Lucy Davis from London is a an elite high rocks athlete, literally in the top, you know, 3 to 5 women athletes in high rocks. She ran the backyard ultra, got second furthest as a woman. She ran 106 miles. Mitch Ammons, who is a marathoner. I mean, he runs like a 2:15 marathon. He's a BPN athlete. He did the backyard ultra, and he got like 100 something. He was third place male. So this idea of these hybrid athletes and multi-sport endurance athletes being in ultras, it's so fascinating, and I
Yeah.
think they're as prepared as anybody to do as well as anybody. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I think as we bring different types of athletes into the sport, they're going to push it in different ways, and it's crazy because, as you know, as ultra runners, as dirt bags, where I squarely live in the dirt bag culture, you know, you don't even want to like lift the groceries for fear of getting some muscles in the upper body, you know, because that's all dead weight up there, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So you know, it's just, I think it's just fun, and I think
yeah.
what I want to do, you know, with you, and as we kind of flesh out what we're going to do together, like, man, just welcome, make sure that community feels as welcome as possible, as much as we're able to welcome. So, all
Love it. Well,
right,
dude,
man,
thanks
let's,
for having me. And
yeah, of
yeah, this
course.
has been real fun to talk about. I've had all these conversations in my head, but never out loud. So thanks for, you know,
Well, now,
letting
yeah,
me say
well,
it all out loud.
now you'll have a place. We'll keep
Love
figuring
it.
this out, but have a safe trip to Maine, and we'll be in touch.
Appreciate you.
All right, man, see you.